Hello, I'm JD Bowens, fantasy author, podcaster, and artist. Today I'll be reading from the Pilgrim Stone. While I draw some faces, join me and relax to this ASMR-inspired video. To read more of the Pilgrim Stone, click on the links below in the description, and to view more art, visit my Etsy shop at yourcardboutique.etsy.com. Prologue. The lantern light painted nearby bookcases in a dim orange hue. Margaret Thagula, Dean of the School of Truth at the College of Anadrek, stood in the repository before the iron door, the entrance to the deep vault. The translucent magical wards hung over it from floor to ceiling, like several layers of brightly colored curtains. They sparkled in the lantern light like a rainbow, orange, red, gold, and purple. Yet something was wrong. She brushed her blonde and gray locks behind her ear and opened her true eye, a third eye in the center of her forehead. Her rare gift allowed her to see threads of magic invisible to most mages. It also let her see the essence of intent. Dark intentions were a shade of black, and innocence a shade of white.
There it is, a crack in the wards. Someone is still trying to break into the deep vault.
The crack was tiny, almost imperceptible. She had only discovered it 2 nights ago during her regular inspection of the wards. As one of the school's deans, inspecting it was her responsibility. It was no surprise to her that the other deans had missed it.
But who is responsible for this?
The crack was made by a ward-eating spell, a niche enchantment of arcana magic. Only someone well-studied and gifted in enchantments would be able to cast such a spell.
But at this rate, it would take months for the spell to eat through the wards. This person is begging to be caught.
She looked around the repository, hoping to find a clue. At the far end of the enormous chamber walked the keeper, a steel golem patrolling the entrance. Bookcases bearing tomes of rare spells lined the walls. The smell of perfumed incense left a faint trail of smoke and a light flowery aroma that chased away the musty smell of time. The repository was largely a museum of harmless antiques, but for some of the sentient objects, it was a prison. Margaret furrowed her brow in concentration.
I should have seen this in my visions of the future, unless someone is manipulating the threads of time.
Her chest felt tight and constricted as she considered the implications. She took a deep breath and calmed herself. She expanded the vision of her true eye. She had left a tracer spell on the wards of the deep vault.
With any luck, I will be able to follow this spell back to them.
She spied the spell under the rainbow curtain of wards, a purple spiderweb wrapped around the crack.
If the culprit has returned, there will be some sign of disturbance.
Indeed, threads of the web were torn, and fingerprints of the same color glimmered on the walls and door like faded stars. She smiled. They had returned.
The spell is too faint. I'll never be able to see this on someone's hands. It's a good thing I sent for Alton. His true eye's vision is much stronger. He will solve this with little problem.
She touched the tracer spell to enhance it. Margaret's chest exploded in pain, and she struggled to breathe. Collapsed to the ground as she clutched her chest.
Help, please.
Her voice was no more than a breathless whimper. The keeper would never hear her.
My heart.
She attempted to rise, but only managed to prop herself on her arms. The stone was cold beneath her hands. Her body felt heavy, and everything seemed so far away. Her heart pounded like a war drum, and her breath sporadic and shallow. Black shadow slipped from underneath the vault door. It was whisper thin and blacker than night. It swirled in the air, her head inches from the face. Twisted and expanded until it was the vague shape of a dragon, wings spread and tail trailing beneath.
What is this?
It wasn't another spell. She would have caught that. It was the essence of the spell. Margaret's lungs and heart seized as she convulsed on the floor. She could not speak or scream, only whimper in pain. She tried to ignore the pain and focused on the spell and the shadow above her.
What intention could be so evil that it would appear as a dragon?
Light flashed before her and stole her sight. Time stopped, and the pain fell away. Everything was still. Her heart, her lungs, even the shadow.
Vision now?
When her sight returned, she was on the back of a great eagle, soaring through the sky. Pink and orange rays of sun crested the horizon and parted the clouds around her. There was no pain here, no fear of death. Thunder rippled through the sky, and Margaret became aware of the countless great eagles that soared around her, dipping and rising in the sky. Their golden feathers shimmered in the gleaming sunlight as their cries echoed throughout. In the distance was a boy riding a great eagle alone. He rose up higher and higher in the air, following the sun, and disappeared into the light with all the other eagles. Only Margaret remained. The sun became the moon, and the sky became dark, dotted with distant constellations. A rush of wind, and Margaret sensed something had fallen past her. She was filled with fright for a moment. Something was falling all around her.
Is it the eagles?
No. In the moonlight she could see that these were large reptilian monsters with talons the size of men.
Dragons!
Their hideous scales reflected the moonlight as they fell, motionless to the blackened earth below. She smiled. She recognized this vision. Her sight returned her to the repository, where she still lay on the floor, the shadow of the dragon hovering above. But she was fearless now. She knew the dragon's shadow belonged to the darkest evil, but her vision gave her assurance.
This is fate. It's all part of the threads of time.
The last few verses of an old prophecy raced to her mind. In Amarant the gods departed, but in the next age they return. Nemoth's children will wholehearted bring new fire this world to burn. False gods they shall crumble, from their priests dragons will feed. Human souls they will stumble, when the crimson throne does bleed. But take heart on eagle wings, as griffins to the sky take flight. Hope in light that Arden brings, and then courage find to fight. But never let the Pilgrim Stone ever reach the crimson throne. Then the mortal realm is doomed, and in darkness all consumed.